Greetings, family. Welcome to the Antoni to Bo Show. I'm Antoni Bo. Thank you for coming to hang and bang with us this evening from the Granger Estates. Presented by Shades of Unity, PDX always. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Would love to hang with you for the rest of our lives. I'm here to share with you in the journey on how to get from point A to B. And here we go. Last time we were with you, we were challenging the human family in what is the trophy. I think we're in a time right now where it's very important that everybody has to do self-reflection and look within self and be confident and competent within self in our own story, that we can present our best us towards one another. You know, I love to say A to B, or we pass the baton to each other, because that's all that life is. We turn around, we're born, we live, and then we die. And in that time of a vapor, because that's all life is a vapor. It goes just like that. Remember when I was in high school, walking the halls, thinking I was the man. And now if I look back, I've been out of high school now for 35 years. 35 years. Life just goes like that. In that you get in the hustle and bustle and you end up having families, and now I got grandchildren. But the hope in it being a vapor, you would hope that you have paid attention enough and has slowed down the life tape enough to press rewind and fast forward and pause to where you can study your own life. You know, we get a lot of looking at each other. We get a lot of me being an expert of your film. But I think it's time for the critical theories to come back and reflect on us. So, you know, they call that thing critical race theory. How about we call it critical Bo theory? And reflect it back on me and critique me and let it theorize my life and let it tell the story as is. So with that, I think last episode, I was telling you about my mama's cooking, her mashed potatoes in particular. I can smell it to this day, and it's like it's a soundtrack to my life, and it puts me right back in those memories. And so with that, I'm glad for that foundation that I had and what my mother provided. Now, she's probably just trying to feed us. She didn't, think it was going to, do that for me. But from that time when I'd probably say 7 or 8 years old, I always used to look at those mashed potatoes, and I would always compare those mashed potatoes to the clouds in the sky. And from 8 years old, I came up with this saying that I only knew for myself, that I encouraged myself with, and it was called mashed potatoes in the sky. When I was 7 years old, I felt like my life was just going just like anybody else's life. The first time I felt like my life was making a shift that was like beyond just any average shift was this one time. So I have an older brother. Man, I looked up to my older brother so much. And so I think my older brother is 6.5 years older than me. And so at 7 years old, he would have been 13, 14 years old. I remember coming home from school. As soon as I got home, I learned that he had gotten in trouble. And the trouble he had got in, I believe he had taken some money from one of my relatives. At that time, I had a stepdad He wasn't, well, let me take that back. Not at that time, he wasn't my stepdad. Him and my mother ended up getting married later on, but he was my mother's boyfriend, and he would stay at my home, my mother's home periodically. I remember when my brother got in trouble, we always knew it would be consequences. Growing up, I always knew it would be consequences, when you did something out of order. But this time was different because it was my mother's boyfriend who disciplined my brother. And I'll never forget how he did it. We had a garage, and in the garage, what he did, the little thing that hangs over where it lifts the garage and the garage lifts and then it comes back down, whatever that thing is that controls that. But he tied my brother's hands and linked the tie, whatever he was using, he linked it over the bar to tie his hands. And so his hands was up above his head and he was hanging. And he was dangling from the bar and his feet could hit the ground, but he was stuck, like handcuffed with whatever was tied up around him on this bar. And I remember just seeing him like that, and I knew what was coming. Because I got in trouble. I had my tail whooped before. That happened to me before, but not nothing like this. I had never seen nothing like this. You know what it reminds me of? I got a distant cousin. His name is Todd Haley. And Todd Haley is the grandson of Alex Haley. Y'all know who Alex Haley is? Alex Haley is the one who created Roots. As a boy, I remember watching Roots, and I remember they would have Kunta Kinte tied. They was trying to make him accept his name as Toby, and he wouldn't accept it. So they had him tied and they had him hung, and they was just whipping him. When I seen my brother, that's what I thought of. He was hanging there for a minute, like it didn't start yet. And then I remember I'll say my stepdad. I remember him coming finally out and going to the garage, and I knew it was about to go down. And then I left, and I just went in my room, and I shut my door, and I tried to turn up the TV, and I just tried to drown in my room, all the noise, right? So it started happening. He started whooping him with the belt, right, while he was hanging there. And he made him take his shirt off. My curiosity and my care for my brother then made me turn the TV down. Because I don't know, I had to hear what was going on. I had to hear what was going on. And I could just hear the sounds of the hits, and I could hear him screaming. My stepdad, he paused, and he left. I remember him leaving, and so I heard him leave, open the door, so I got up out of my room, and I went to the garage, and I opened the door, and I seen my brother there, and I was trying to comfort my bruh. I was trying to do it and hurry up and do it before he came back. He seen me at the door, and so I left, and I just went back. I didn't say nothing. And he started doing it again, and I can hear it again. Then he stops again. Then he leaves. And so then I remember I waited a minute, but this time I was so emotionally shook, I didn't know what to do, right? I wanted to help my brother. But then I knew he did wrong. But then I wanted to help my brother. So I was like frozen. I was scared, right? And so then I heard my mother and my stepdad arguing. They were arguing, which I can assume now they were arguing about what he was doing. And so they were arguing, and I think I remember using that opportunity to go one more time to go out there and check on my brother. And when I went out there to check on my brother, when I opened the door, my brother was gone. So he must have unraveled the ties, and he opened up the garage and he took off. That's the first time I ever heard the language called somebody running away. He ran away. As crucial and traumatizing as the whooping was, I think for myself, my brother running away and him being gone and me not having no clue where he was, and the first night he was gone, he didn't come back home, that I think traumatized me even more. He was just gone. And I had no clue where he was. This is no cell phones. This is none of that. And I had no clue in where he was. I remember my mother calling the police, and he was just gone. So I think he ended up being gone for 3 days, I believe. From there, they finally caught up with him, and then they brought him back home. And I think from that time, my mother had told my stepdad that he had to go. And so she booted him where he couldn't be in the house no more. And I think that broke them up. But even though my stepdad was gone, it triggered things in my brother. My brother was already kind of going on a track, but I think it like expedited what was going on with my brother. And so then my brother just started getting into a whole bunch of trouble, because I think from there, my brother it was almost like he had no feeling no more. I'll put some pictures up, and I want you to notice in one of these pictures, everybody is just smiling, and then my brother is smiling, but it's almost you can see through his smile that his smile is not genuine like the other smiles. And so he had a whole bunch of hurt going on with him, right? He wasn't doing well in school, and I found myself, my mind would get distracted because I would always be thinking about like how my brother is doing during the day. He started hopping into certain crowds and being with different crowds, and I can say probably fast forward some months from there, he ended up getting in trouble with the law. And then this was a charge that I heard of before, but it never was like a reality to me. But they called it kidnapping. It just really threw me off, right? And I'm like, man, okay, well, what is that? Now, mind you, I'm 8 years old. I'm trying to figure out, like, what is this? What does it mean? Till this day, I still don't even understand all the details to what it was when I was 8 years old. But one thing I do remember, I remember going to school at 8 years old, and I had a cousin. My cousin was the only one that knew what was going on. And I remember seeing my cousin, and first thing I did with her was I talked to her about, I didn't want nobody to know. I made up a story. And then I asked her, can she agree to tell that story if anybody asks? So from that time, my bra was going in and out of youth authority. And so we moved to a different neighborhood. In that neighborhood, I love it. It's a neighborhood that, I really matured on, was where we moved. But my bra wasn't there because he was in and out, right? And so it was me and my mother. I remember it was this day, a knock was on the door, and it was my stepdad, or my mom's former boyfriend. And I seen him and my heart just got to beating and pulsating 100 miles an hour. And so I let my mother know that he was there, and my mother come down, and she wouldn't let him in. And so he would sit on the porch and he would talk to my mother for hours. Like, they were still beefing. And I'm sure it's for a whole bunch of myriad of other things too. But they was beefing. And so she wouldn't open the door, or she would talk to him through the screen. He would just talk to her, for hours. And next thing you know, he started coming over every day and he would do just that. Well, eventually, she told me one day, hey, I'm gonna let him in. It was wild about it because I really kind of looked up to him. I looked up to him. I don't even know if I looked up to him for the right reasons neither, because he was like this, he was a hustler. He would have his cars. He would be on the streets and the spots. He would have his buddies, especially when he moved in where we was, because where we was, he ended up moving in. And then we had a basement. He would set up his little spot and his little so-called after hours spot and pool tables, and they be down there drinking and everything else. It's like I was scared of him because I know what he was capable of, but then like I looked up to him at the same time. That's a crazy dynamic when you have fear and admiration at the same time, right? I would try my best to try to get downstairs when they was downstairs hanging out, kicking it, him and his buddies hanging out downstairs. But my mother would never let me go down there, right? So I would get up in a room that was kind of above the downstairs, and I would put my ear to the vent. And I would sit my ear on that vent for an hour, just listening. Eventually, I would just sneak down there. Without my mother's permission, I sneak down there. Next thing you know, he had me down there playing pool and everything else. And I'd be down there kicking it, with his buddies or whatnot. Fast forward a little bit, him and my mother decided to get married. I knew at that age that he was a hustler. I remember this one time when it confirmed it for me, man, he brought all this marijuana into the house. He had it, I remember he had it all out around the house trying to dry it out, right? He had it everywhere, opened in all these bowls, trying to dry it out. And here go my heart again, pitter-pattering, right? And thinking, man, the police is about to kick our door in and everybody is about to go to jail. Not just my brother, everybody about to go to jail, right? A lot of discomfort. A lot of pressure, a lot of intrusive thoughts, and you're always thinking the worst. And I remember my mother getting home one day, and she had asked me, had I seen my stepdad? I told her, man, no, I haven't seen him. And so it was the next day, and I remember getting up, and my thought was to go ask my mother, had he got home yet? And she said he still hadn't got home. That next day turned into another day. Then that next day turned into another day. Then turned to another day. Then it had been about 3 days. And I remember he kind of run out here, and he be hustling, and he kind of out here. And, he's doing this thing. And so even though it's strange, it could be, an outlier where it's not so strange. I'll never forget this. It was one night, probably on day 4 of that week. And I remember it was probably about 11:30 at night. And I remember the doorbell rang at 11 at night. And my mother gets up. I'm already an emotional wreck. I've been an emotional wreck since 8 years old. So I get up immediately. I hear it immediately, get in my bedroom door, looking to see my mom. My mother's going downstairs. She goes downstairs, and it was a couple of men at the door. Those men had my stepdad's car. The car was out front, and they had his car. And I remember standing at the top of the stairs and I'm listening to the conversation between the men and my mother. And the men were saying something like, he said to bring his car back here and for us to meet him here and to come meet him here. My mother was like, what do you mean? Why do you got his car? It was like, oh yeah, he wants us to come in and, meet him here. He on his way back home. My mother was like, no, you are not coming in here. And she was like, where is he at? And why do you have his car? And you need to tell him he needs to call home, and wherever he is, you need to tell him he got to get on home. And so I guess the men seen that she wasn't going to open the door. And so they got back in the car and they left. I get up and I go to school the next day. I'm at school all day, a wreck. But after school, we have basketball practice, right? And so I'm on the basketball team. And I remember practicing, and basketball kind of helped out in allowing me to get my mind, kind of clear. And so we get done with basketball practice. And when we got done, my mother wasn't out there to pick me up. And so, it went from 5 minutes late, 10 minutes late, 20 minutes late, 30 minutes late, probably about an hour. My coach had to say, still wasn't nobody there to pick me up. And then finally, my cousin comes through the door. He said, man, my mom here to pick you up. And I said, oh, okay. I said, where my mom? He like, man, just come, just come on. And so I came and I got into the car with them and we're driving home. Nobody was saying nothing. So we hit the corner of my home and I see all these cars lined up on my block. I got up to the house and my house was full of folks, full of people. And I came in the house. I remember my mother was crying and my stepdad had got murdered. I always remember they had the TV on and had it on the news. And the news was playing the story. I remember that. This fella was walking his dog, I believe, if I can remember correctly. And in walking the dog, the dog's curious and they smelling everything as they walk. And the dog kept pulling to this porch. And the man was trying to walk, continue to walk the dog, but the dog wouldn't go. It kept pulling to this porch. So the man followed the dog to the porch. And when the dog got, because the porches, it was those kind of porches, I don't even know if they have these anymore. The kind of porches where they would build the porches and then you can put stuff up under the porch. Up under the porch was like a storage and you can put stuff up under the porch. Well, that's what kind of porch this was. And when the dog got to the porch, he said he looked in the porch. He seen a dead body under the porch. And then that's when they called the authorities and it was my stepdad under the porch. He had multiple broken bones. I believe they had bludgeoned him to death. They crushed his skull, broke all his bones, and then wrapped him up and put him up under the porch. Now at this time, my whole life is going haywire now. Now I'm totally afraid. Pretty much of life. I'm afraid of life. I remember. I'll never forget this. I remember every day after that happened, I would go downstairs before I went to bed and I would grab a knife out of the drawer and I would put it up under my pillow in my room. Every night I would grab a knife, put it on my pillow. And I remember one day my mother was down there cooking, and she was opening up the drawer to get a knife, and it wasn't no knives in the drawer. And she yelled for me to come down and was asking, have I seen, the knives? And she said, I don't have no knives in the drawer. And when she said that, it hit me. I didn't realize it, but it hit me that, man, I took all the knives. And I went upstairs and I had like 20 knives in my room. And so I had to bring all the knives back down. I remember when I came down and I had all the knives, I just handed her the knives. Man, I just started boo-hooing. I didn't realize that, I knew I was messed up, but I just didn't realize how much, it was messing me up. She didn't realize how much it was messing me up. And so I remember her calling my uncle. And my uncle, he used to play for University of the Oregon Ducks, and he was a big-time ball player, big dude, and we always looked at him for toughness. And I remember telling him how scared I was to be at the house because the men, they didn't catch the men. The men were still out there, and I thought the men were going to come back to kill us. That's what I always would think every night, that they was going to come back to kill us. I remember my uncle asking me, well, do you want to come live with me? And I remember telling him, yeah, I want to come live with you. Yes, yes. But then I was like, man, but I can't leave my mom. My brother was in authority. I was like, I can't leave my mom. But yeah, I want to come live with you, but I can't leave my mom. And so from that, I think it always had me on edge, waiting for the next, episode of life just shifting into the worst. I was always anticipating the worst thing happening, the worst thing, something worser than that. And it's just getting worse and worse and worse. And with that mindset and with that thought, I felt like I had to start building a rivalry mentality versus a reconciliation mentality because I felt like I was being too vulnerable. So what it did, it made me start to harden my life disposition. And I started to become very hard because I felt like that was going to be my offense to be my defense. Kind of like strike first, before something strikes me, right? And so with that, I start to become very, 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 very hard and really not caring about nothing when I got into my teen years. You would think it would reconcile and get better, but family, man, it started to get worse. Like way worse. I'm gonna cut you right there, man. I think on the next episode, we can dive into how it got way worse before it got better. It's real important that you know my context and what you see, what's being presented for you. This is the storyline and where I come from. So it had to get worse to get better. But in that, we in the journey together. So hopefully y'all come back and tune in for next episode that we can walk this thing together. Hopefully you're encouraged by life and just what we're speaking concerning to life, and that it can get you from point A to point B. Sorry. So again, we'll leave you like this. Let me ask you a question. Can a book be read without ink and paper? I'll fast forward it for you. Yes, if you go speak to the author. If you go speak to the author, it can be read. All right. Hey, peace be. See you next time, y'all.